Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time we're taking a look at something that's pretty cutting-edge AI integration in FileMaker 2024. And especially for you, as a former FileMaker programmer, it's going to be really interesting. I've got your notes here and some articles about the new features. I'm super excited to unpack it all with our expert and see what this means for you.
It's a big step for FileMaker, for sure. For those who may not be familiar with it, FileMaker is sort of like, I guess you could say, a digital Lego set for building those custom business apps and databases. But now they've gone and integrated large language models, like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini. That's
Yeah.
where it gets really interesting.
So we've got these powerful AI brains sort of working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But what can they actually do within FileMaker?
Yeah.
Give us the wow fact.
Okay, so imagine searching your database just by asking a question in plain English. That's semantic search in action, all powered by those LLMs. And that's really just the beginning. Developers are now building scripts that can automate really complex tasks, generating custom reports, specifically tailored to needs, even interacting with other AI models outside of FileMaker itself.
So it's not just about making things, look fancy. It's about giving FileMaker, superpowers, right? How is this even possible? Did FileMaker, hire a bunch of AI wizards overnight?
Not quite. What's impressive is how they've built in the features to specifically support these LLMs. There's native support for a bunch of different models, which gives developers flexibility. And they've added new AI-focused script actions and calculation functions. And for those who might be concerned about data privacy, you can actually use local models instead of relying on those big public ones.
So thinking back to your days as a FileMaker programmer, this has got to be sparking some ideas. Imagine, jumping back into development with this kind of AI toolkit at your disposal. It could, revolutionize how you approach building applications, right?
Oh, for sure. The potential is huge. I mean, complex tasks that used to take hours could be done in just minutes. And it opens up, a whole new world of functionality for FileMaker applications. But we got to be real for a sec. There are some limitations to consider.
Right. With all the hype around AI, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement and overlook the practical challenges. So let's talk about those limitations. What are we really looking at here?
Okay, well, let's break it down into three main categories: technical, functional, and implementation challenges. Starting with the technical side, response times from these LLMs can be kind of slow, which is a problem for those interactive features.
So it's not quite instant magic then.
Yeah.
Users might actually have to wait a bit for the AI to, do its thinking. What else is on the technical side?
Well, there are also limits to how much text these LLMs can actually process at once. It's called token limits. And it could actually restrict functionality when you're dealing with large data sets or, complex requests.
And I'm guessing using these powerful LLMs probably isn't free.
You got it. There's definitely a cost factor. Using LLMs, especially for applications with, heavy usage, it can get expensive. So developers will need to weigh that cost against the benefits.
Okay, cost is definitely a consideration.
Yeah.
But what about the actual functionality? Are there things that AI just can't do well within FileMaker?
Well, one thing to remember is that the quality of the AI's output depends heavily on the model you choose. And importantly, the data it was trained on. Classic garbage in, garbage out scenario.
So even if FileMaker makes it, easy to use AI, you still need to be smart about choosing the right model and feeding it good data.
Yeah.
What other functional limitations should we be aware of?
One that gets a lot of attention is the tendency of LLMs to hallucinate. This is when they generate information that sounds plausible but is actually, incorrect or just nonsensical.
Wait, AI hallucinations? That sounds kind of unsettling. I'm guessing this happens because the AI doesn't really understand the information, right?
Exactly. LLMs are masters of recognizing patterns in data, but they don't have the same kind of understanding that we do. This can lead to some unpredictable and sometimes, unreliable results.
Okay, so we've got potential technical hiccups and the fact that AI isn't perfect. What about actually implementing these AI features? What makes it difficult for developers?
One of the biggest challenges is specializing an LLM for very specific tasks within FileMaker. Techniques like fine-tuning and RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, can help, but they also add complexity. It's not a simple plug-and-play situation.
So even though FileMaker's made it easier to work with AI, there's still a learning curve for developers who want to really harness its power.
Absolutely. And on top of that, data privacy is still a concern. Even with the option to use local models, developers need to think carefully about how sensitive information is handled when AI is involved.
You brought up some really important points.
Yeah.
It's clear that AI in FileMaker is a powerful tool with incredible potential. But it's not a silver bullet. There are definitely limitations and challenges to consider.
That's why it's so important to have these discussions. We need to look at both the bright side and the potential pitfalls.
Exactly. And that brings us to a crucial question. How might this AI integration have impacted your past work as a FileMaker programmer? Would it have been a helpful tool or more of a headache?
Let's dive into that in our next segment. Yeah, thinking back to my days as a FileMaker programmer, it's fascinating to consider how AI could have changed my approach to projects.
Let's set the scene a bit for our listeners. Can you give us an example of like a typical project you might have tackled back then? What kinds of challenges were you wrestling with?
Sure. A common scenario was building a custom database for like a business to manage, their inventory, their customer relationships, or sales processes. These projects often involve complex calculations, data validation rules, and generating reports on a regular basis.
Okay, so pretty standard database stuff. But I imagine even those, standard tasks could get pretty tedious and time-consuming when you're writing all the code from scratch.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of manual coding involved, and debugging those intricate calculations, that could be a real headache.
So imagine you had access to these AI tools within FileMaker back then. Do you think it would have been a true game changer for you, or are we, romanticizing the possibilities a little bit?
It's hard to say for sure, but it certainly could have made a significant difference. Think about those complex calculations we were just talking about. AI could have potentially generated those automatically, or at least assisted with the process, saving a ton of time and reducing the risk of errors.
So less time wrestling with code and more time focusing on, the overall functionality and user experience. I can see the appeal of that. What about data validation? Wasn't that always a bit of a pain in FileMaker?
It definitely was. You had to write very specific rules to handle all the different ways data could be entered, and it was easy to miss something. With AI, you could potentially train it to learn from the data itself and identify potential errors or inconsistencies much more intelligently.
That makes a lot of sense. Instead of trying to anticipate every possible scenario, the AI could adapt and learn as new data comes in. That could make those applications a lot more robust. Yeah. What about reporting? I remember that always being a bit of a chore in FileMaker.
Oh, absolutely. Creating custom reports often meant writing complex queries and manually formatting the output. It could take hours to get everything just right. With AI, you could potentially generate reports on the fly, tailored to specific requests, or even delivered as natural language summaries.
So instead of spending hours crafting a report, you could just ask the AI, show me the top selling products this month, and it would give you the insights you need in a format that's easy to understand. That's powerful stuff.
Exactly. It could have completely transformed how users interacted with data and made those applications much more insightful and valuable. But it's important to remember that all of this is hypothetical. We're talking about AI capabilities that didn't really exist back then.
That's a good point. We can get carried away imagining the possibilities, but it's important to be realistic about the limitations of the technology at that time. So even if FileMaker had integrated AI back then, it might not have been the silver bullet we're imagining now. What specific challenges do you think you would have faced in trying to, implement AI in your projects?
Well, the AI models themselves wouldn't have been nearly as sophisticated as they are today. They wouldn't have had the same level of accuracy, fluency, or ability to understand, complex nuances in language.
So the garbage in, garbage out problem we discussed earlier would have been even more of a concern.
Absolutely. And the computational power required to run those models would have been much greater. It might have been impossible to deploy AI features on the hardware available at the time.
So even if you had the vision to build AI into your applications, you might have been held back by the technology of the day.
Yeah.
What other challenges come to mind?
One major hurdle would have been the lack of readily available tools and resources for integrating AI with FileMaker. There wasn't the same kind of ecosystem or community support that we have today.
So you would have been more of an AI pioneer, forging your own path without much guidance. That sounds pretty challenging.
It would have been. And even if I had managed to get, the technical aspects working, there's the human element to consider. Trying to educate users about how to interact with these new AI-powered features would have been another challenge.
Right. People might have been resistant to change or, unsure about how to leverage AI effectively. It's not just about the technology, it's about the people using it.
Exactly. It would have required a shift in mindset, both for developers and users, to really embrace the potential of AI in a FileMaker context. And that takes time and effort.
It's fascinating to look back and consider these what-ifs. Even though AI wasn't as readily available then, it's clear that you were already thinking about how to make FileMaker applications more powerful and user-friendly. Now, with FileMaker 2024 integrating these LLMs, those possibilities are becoming a reality.
It's definitely an exciting time to be following FileMaker development, but as we've discussed, there are still limitations and challenges to consider.
Exactly. So in our final segment, let's shift gears and explore some key takeaways for both developers and users who are eager to explore this new world of AI in FileMaker. What advice would you give them based on your experience? Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into AI and FileMaker. We've gone over the potential and some of those limitations and challenges. So what does this all mean for you, our listeners? As a former FileMaker programmer yourself, how should you be thinking about this new AI landscape?
Well, the main thing is AI in FileMaker is, it's a huge opportunity, but it's also a complex challenge. It's not going to be a magic wand that just solves all your problems, but it is a powerful tool that can change how we build and use applications.
It's like being given a whole new toolbox.
Mhm.
You've got to learn how to use the tools properly, understand their limitations,
Yeah.
and maybe wear some safety goggles while you're at it, right?
Exactly. And like with any new tool, it takes time and practice to master it. FileMaker developers who, put in the effort to really learn about AI and experiment with those capabilities, they'll have a big advantage moving forward.
So it's not just about understanding the technical side of AI. It's about thinking creatively and finding new ways to apply it specifically within FileMaker.
Exactly. The most exciting developments will come when developers start thinking outside the box and using AI to create applications that we haven't even imagined yet.
And it's not all on the developers either. Users also have a role to play in this whole future of AI and FileMaker.
Oh, absolutely. Users need to be open to these new AI-powered features, provide feedback to the developers, and really help identify those areas where AI can make their work, easier and more productive.
It's a collaborative effort then, with the developers and users working together to kind of unlock the full potential of this technology. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
Think back to your own experiences as a FileMaker programmer. What were some of those biggest challenges that you faced? What tasks could have been easier or more efficient if you had these AI tools at your disposal back then? Could you have used AI to make your applications more user-friendly, more insightful, or even just more enjoyable to use?
It's amazing to think about. The possibilities really are endless. It's up to developers, like you, to shape the future of FileMaker in this new era of AI.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AI and FileMaker. We hope you found it insightful and that you're just as excited as we are about all possibilities.